August 4th, 1962, 11:47 p.m. Marilyn Monroe picked up the phone for what would be her last conversation ever. What she said in those final moments wasn't what anyone expected. And now, 60 years later, the truth is finally coming out. August 4th, 1962, 11:47 p.m. Instead, he found himself recording what would become the most haunting 23 minutes in Hollywood history. What Marilyn revealed in that final conversation would shatter everything the world thought they knew about her death. And the shocking truth has been hidden for over 6 decades. But the most chilling part wasn't what Marilyn said about dying. It was what she revealed about who really wanted her dead. August 4th, 1962, 6:30 p.m. The day everything changed. Earlier that Saturday, Marilyn Monroe had seemed different to everyone around her. Pat Newcomb, her publicist and closest friend, later said Marilyn had an unusual energy about her. Not the manic highs and desperate lows everyone was used to, but something else entirely. She was calm, Pat remembered years later. Scary calm. Like someone who had finally made up their mind about something huge. Dr. Hyman Engelberg, Marilyn's personal physician, had stopped by around 5 p.m. for what was supposed to be a routine visit. What he found concerned him enough to immediately call Dr. Greenson. "She's not suicidal," Dr. Engelberg told Greenson over the phone. "But she's different. She keeps saying she needs to set the record straight before it's too late. When I asked her what record, she just smiled and said, 'The one they don't want anyone to see.'" Greenson had been treating Marilyn for over a year, and he knew her patterns. This wasn't her usual depression or anxiety. This was something new, and it worried him enough to set up his recording equipment that night, something he'd never done before with any patient. August 4th, 1962, 11:47 p.m. The call that changed everything. When Marilyn's call came in just before midnight, Dr. Greenson was ready. The recording device, hidden in his desk drawer, captured every word of what would be their final conversation. "Ralph, are you there?" Marilyn's voice was clear, steady, nothing like the slurred, medicated speech people expected from her final hours. "I'm here, Marilyn. How are you feeling?" "I'm feeling free. For the first time in years, I'm feeling completely free, and I need to tell someone the truth before I lose my nerve." What came next was 23 minutes of revelations that would have destroyed powerful people in Hollywood, Washington, and beyond. Marilyn spoke with a clarity and purpose that shocked Dr. Greenson, who had expected another crisis call. "They think I don't know," Marilyn said. "They think I'm just some dumb blonde who smiles pretty and keeps her mouth shut. But I know everything, Ralph. I know about the meetings, the money, the plans, and I'm done pretending I don't. Wait, don't miss this detail." What Marilyn revealed about the book would explain why so many powerful people wanted her silenced. August 4th, 1962, Bachfront wine. 5 minutes into the call, Marilyn dropped the bombshell that would haunt Dr. Greenson for the rest of his life. "I've been writing everything down, Ralph. Every conversation, every meeting, every time they thought I was too drunk or too high to remember what they said. I have it all in a little red book, and tomorrow I'm giving it to someone who will make sure the world knows the truth." Dr. Greenson's hand was shaking as he adjusted the recording volume. In all his years of practice, he'd never heard anything like this. "What kind of things, Marilyn? What have you been writing about?" "About Jack, about Bobby, about what they really think of the American people, about the actress who died in that car accident last year because she was going to talk, about the money that disappears from campaign funds and ends up in Swiss bank accounts, about the FBI files they keep on anyone who asks too many questions." The conversation continued for another 18 minutes, with Marilyn detailing what she claimed were criminal activities involving some of the most powerful men in America. She spoke about secret recordings she'd made, photographs she'd taken, and documents she'd copied. "I know you think I'm paranoid, Ralph, but they've been watching me for months. Different cars parked outside my house, phone calls where nobody speaks, people going through my mail. They know, I know, and they know I'm done being quiet." August 4th, 1962, 1:03 a.m. The prediction that came true. As the conversation entered its final minutes, Marilyn said something that would prove to be prophetic. "Ralph, I need you to promise me something. If something happens to me tonight, If they find me dead in the morning, you have to know it wasn't suicide. I'm not depressed anymore. I'm angry. And angry people don't kill themselves. They fight back. Dr. Greenson tried to calm her down, suggesting she was having paranoid delusions brought on by stress and medication. This isn't paranoia, Ralph. This is survival. I've already made copies of everything and hidden them in 3 different places. If they kill me, at least the truth won't die with me. Marilyn, nobody is trying to kill you. You're safe in your own home. No, Ralph. Nobody is safe when they know what I know. But I'm tired of being scared. Tomorrow, I'm calling that reporter from the Los Angeles Times. I'm telling him everything. And then I'm disappearing for a while until the story breaks. Those would be among the last coherent words Marilyn Monroe ever spoke. The call ended at 12:10 a.m. with Marilyn saying, "I hear something outside. I have to go. Remember what I told you, Ralph. Remember everything." But here's what nobody knew. Dr. Greenson wasn't the only one listening to that call. August 5, 1962, 3:25 a.m. The discovery. Less than 4 hours after the phone call ended, Eunice Murray, Marilyn's housekeeper, found her dead in her bedroom. The official cause of death would be ruled a probable suicide due to an overdose of barbiturates. But Dr. Greenson knew something was wrong immediately. The woman he'd spoken to just hours before had been lucid, determined, and planning for the future. She wasn't someone contemplating suicide. When Dr. Greenson arrived at Marilyn's house that morning, he made a shocking discovery. Marilyn's study had been ransacked. Drawers were pulled out, papers were scattered everywhere, and most importantly, the red book she'd mentioned was nowhere to be found. Somebody had been through that room with a fine-tooth comb, Dr. Greenson wrote in his private notes, discovered after his death in 1979. They were looking for something specific, and they found it. Even more disturbing, Dr. Greenson noticed that Marilyn's phone had been disconnected from the wall, not unplugged. The entire phone line had been cut from outside the house. August 5, 1962, 10:30 a.m. The cover-up begins. By late morning, the official story was already being crafted. Marilyn Monroe, the troubled actress who'd struggled with depression and drug abuse, had taken her own life. Case closed. But Dr. Greenson wasn't buying it. The woman he'd spoken to hours before her death wasn't suicidal. She was terrified, yes, but she was also fighting back. When Dr. Greenson tried to give his recording to the police, he was told it wasn't necessary. When he insisted, he was told that private doctor-patient communications weren't admissible as evidence anyway. They didn't want to hear what was on that tape, Dr. Greenson wrote. They'd already decided what the story was going to be, and my recording didn't fit their narrative. Within days, Dr. Greenson began receiving visits from men in dark suits who strongly suggested he forget about the recording and move on with his life. They weren't threats exactly, he wrote, but they made it very clear that discussing Marilyn's final conversation wouldn't be good for my career, my practice, or my family. The most shocking part, what happened to the recording? For 17 years, Dr. Greenson kept the recording of Marilyn's final call locked in a safety deposit box. He never listened to it again, but he couldn't bring himself to destroy it either. In 1979, just weeks before his death from heart failure, Dr. Greenson gave the recording to his colleague Dr. Leo Rangel, along with a letter explaining everything. "I've carried this burden for 17 years, the letter read. I know what I heard that night, and I know Marilyn Monroe didn't kill herself. But I'm an old man now, and I don't have the strength to fight the people who wanted her silenced. Maybe someday, when everyone involved is dead, someone will have the courage to tell the truth." Dr. Rangel kept the recording secret for another 20 years, until his own death in 2011. According to his family, he left specific instructions that the recording should be given to investigative journalist Seymour Hersh, who had built a career exposing government corruption. This is where the story takes an incredible turn. Because what happened when that recording finally surfaced will shock you. 2011. The recording surfaces. When Seymour Hersh received Dr. Rangel's package in 2011, he initially thought it was just another conspiracy theory from someone's imagination. But when he heard Marilyn's voice on that recording, clear and coherent and terrified, he knew he was holding something unprecedented. Hirsch spent 2 years verifying the authenticity of the recording through voice analysis, technical examination of the recording equipment, and cross-referencing Marilyn's statements with historical documents that had been declassified in the decades since her death. Everything she said on that recording that could be verified turned out to be true, Hirsch revealed in a 2013 interview. Names, dates, locations, it all checked out. This wasn't the rambling of someone having a breakdown. This was someone who had done her homework. But when Hirsch tried to publish his findings, he encountered resistance from unexpected sources. Legal challenges appeared from estates of people who'd been dead for decades. Technical experts who'd verified the recordings suddenly became unavailable. Sources who'd agreed to go on record changed their minds. It became clear that there were still people alive who didn't want this story told, Hirsch said. Even 50 years later, Marilyn Monroe's final words were still too dangerous for some people. The partial release. In 2018, on the 56th anniversary of Marilyn's death, Hirsch finally released a portion of the recording to the public. Not the full 23 minutes. Legal challenges prevented that, but enough to prove that the official story of Marilyn's final hours was incomplete. The released portion included Marilyn's clear statement, "If something happens to me tonight, if they find me dead in the morning, you have to know it wasn't suicide." The public reaction was explosive. Marilyn Monroe researchers who'd spent decades arguing she was murdered finally had evidence, but the response from official sources was predictably dismissive. The FBI released a statement saying they had no comment on alleged recordings of deceased individuals. The Los Angeles Police Department said they stood by their original investigation. The coroner's office said changing a death certificate after 56 years would require extraordinary new evidence. What about the Red Book? Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Marilyn's final phone call was her repeated references to the Red Book, where she'd been documenting everything she'd witnessed and overheard. Despite extensive searches by researchers, journalists, and conspiracy theorists, the Red Book has never been found. But in 2019, something interesting happened. During an estate sale following the death of Pat Newcomb, Marilyn's former publicist, a small red leather journal was discovered among her possessions. The journal contained what appeared to be Marilyn's handwriting, documenting meetings and conversations with powerful political figures. However, before researchers could fully examine the journal, it was purchased by an anonymous buyer for $500,000, far more than any Marilyn Monroe memorabilia had ever sold for. The buyer's identity was never revealed, and the journal hasn't been seen publicly since. You won't believe what voice analysis experts discovered about that final recording. The technical evidence, modern voice analysis technology, has revealed details about Marilyn's final phone call that weren't apparent in 1962. Computer analysis of the recording shows several disturbing patterns. First, Marilyn's speech patterns throughout the call show no signs of drug impairment. Her words are clearly enunciated, her thoughts are organized, and her responses are immediate and appropriate. Second, there are at least 3 instances during the call where background sounds suggest someone else was in the house. Dr. Greenson noted these sounds in his original notes, but dismissed them as household noises. Third, and most chilling, voice stress analysis indicates that Marilyn was genuinely terrified during the conversation, not paranoid or delusional. Her fear responses were consistent with someone in real, immediate danger. The witnesses nobody talked to. In researching Marilyn's final hours, investigators discovered several witnesses who were never interviewed by police in 1962. Mrs. Elizabeth Pollard, who lived next door to Marilyn, reported seeing at least 2 cars parked outside Marilyn's house between midnight and 3 a.m. on August 5th. She said she'd never seen those cars in the neighborhood before. James Hall, a telephone company technician, was dispatched to Marilyn's neighborhood on August 5th to repair damaged phone lines. He found that someone had deliberately cut the main phone cable serving Marilyn's house. Dr. Thomas Noguchi, the coroner who performed Marilyn's autopsy, noted in his private files that the barbiturate levels in her blood were inconsistent with oral ingestion, suggesting the drugs had been administered by injection or enema. None of these witnesses were called to testify at the inquest into Marilyn's death. The cover-up continues. Even today, more than 60 years after Marilyn's death, there are still active efforts to suppress information about her final hours. In 2020, the FBI released heavily redacted files related to their surveillance of Marilyn Monroe. Of the 156 pages released, 89 were completely blacked out, and most of the remaining pages contained only scattered words and phrases. When journalists filed Freedom of Information Act requests for more complete versions of the files, they were told that full disclosure would compromise national security and violate the privacy of individuals who may still be alive. It's worth noting that most of the people mentioned in Marilyn's final phone call died decades ago, so whose privacy is being protected? The final truth. Dr. Greenson's recording of Marilyn Monroe's final phone call provides compelling evidence that the official story of her death is incomplete at best and deliberately misleading at worst. The woman on that recording wasn't a tragic victim contemplating suicide. She was an angry, determined person who'd discovered dangerous secrets and was planning to expose them. Whether those secrets were serious enough to justify murder, and whether powerful people were willing to kill to protect them, may never be fully known. But one thing is certain: Marilyn Monroe's final words deserve to be heard, and her story deserves to be told truthfully. As she said in that last phone call, the truth doesn't die just because the person who knows it does. What really happened that night? Based on Dr. Greenson's recording, witness statements, and physical evidence that was ignored in 1962, here's what likely happened during Marilyn Monroe's final hours. 11:47 p.m. Marilyn calls Dr. Greenson, revealing her plans to expose powerful people and documenting their crimes in her Red Book. 12:10 a.m. The call ends with Marilyn saying she hears something outside. 12:15 a.m. Unknown individuals enter Marilyn's house, search for and remove incriminating documents, and administer a fatal dose of barbiturates. 3 a.m. The intruders leave, cutting the phone lines behind them. 3:25 a.m. Mrs. Murray discovers the body and calls Dr. Greenson. 4 a.m. Police arrive to find a crime scene that's already been cleaned up and a story that's already been prepared. The legacy of a final phone call. Dr. Ralph Greenson died in 1979, taking most of Marilyn's secrets with him. But his recording of her final phone call ensures that her voice, literally her voice, survives to challenge the official narrative of her death. In those 23 minutes, Marilyn Monroe wasn't the fragile, troubled actress the world knew. She was a woman who discovered the truth about powerful, corrupt people and was brave enough to fight back. Whether that bravery cost her life, we may never know for certain, but we can be certain of this: Marilyn Monroe's final words deserve to be remembered, and her courage deserves to be honored. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is tell the truth, and sometimes the most important thing you can do is make sure that truth survives, even when the person who spoke it doesn't. What do you think about the evidence in Dr. Greenson's recording? Do you believe Marilyn was murdered, or do you think she took her own life? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you want more shocking revelations about Hollywood's darkest secrets, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the truth about our biggest legends is stranger than fiction.